So welcome back to cybersecurity, the cybersecurity fundamentals series. Thank you so much for watching. So what we're going to do for this particular video is going to go over user group account management. So we understand there are two types of accounts, user accounts in Windows, right? So there's local and there's also domain users. So a local user account is restricted to the OS on which it was created. The local user cannot perform tasks outside of the local system. So for example, this account cannot be used on another desktop, computer, or laptop, even if it has been created on the same network. So these types of accounts are normally used by home users or a small network without an Active Directory server. It's also important to note that a local user cannot be part of any domain group, so like the domain user. So its scope is strictly limited to the local computer on which it was created, right? So a domain user account, right, is used to log onto a domain to access resources on the domain, right? So for example, file shares that we just went over just in the last video. Your specific permissions are assigned to these types of accounts to assure the user only has access to specific resources, right? So domain users are centrally managed through a system known as Active Directory. We'll get to that in another video, specifically Active Directory and how that works. But the Active Directory is usually installed on a server called a domain controller, right? So, and a domain controller, what that is, it's used for authentication, authorization of the users on the network. So, domain users can be managed using a graphical tool on the domain controller, which is known as, again, Active Directory users and computers. But another more advanced method for managing users and groups is by the use of PowerShell, usually, which instead of having a graphical tool, a terminal tool, it's used to type commands to manage users and groups, which again, I touched on another video. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create local and domain user accounts using a graphical tool on a local computer system. So we're going to be using through Active Directory users and computers on a domain controller, right? So we'll be able to do those things. So right now, we're going to first start with creating a local user, right? So we can create a local user on any Windows OS, whether it's part of a domain or not. So for instance, imagine if you're running a Windows 10 OS on your home computer, during the installation of the OS, a local user account is created by default, which is used for logging into the system, right? So these accounts are restricted to the local OS only. For example, if you create a user account on your home computer, that specific account cannot be used to access a domain join work computer, right? So several of the local user accounts can be created and used for various purposes, such as running services or allowing other users to log into the OS, right? So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and right click here. And so we're going to go into, see if we look to that here. All right, so we finally have everything booted up. So let's go ahead and get started with the user account management. All right, so we're going to go to computer management through here. Holds for us. Okay, second doesn't want to. Let's see. All right, perfect. So let's get it up and running. There we go, computer management. And then we'll see on the left pane once it loads here, local users and groups. We'll expand that. And then we'll select the users folder so we can see the list here. All right, so now that we have that here, we're going to select new user. Let's see. All right, and then the new username, we're just going to create a name here, Jane M. And Mary Jane. Then we'll unclick that. Of course, create a password here. All right. Perfect. So then, once we close this here, we'll see that we've successfully added the new user to our new user dialog box, right? So then now what we're going to do is just matter user account permissions, right? So the permissions of a user account with a local domain It depends on the groups which it's part of, right? So both on the local system and the domain, various groups are created by default. So if you add a user to a specific group on a local system, the user account will inherit the default permissions of the group, right? So in this task, we'll manage Mary Jane's account permissions and add the backup operators group to her account, right? So we'll still have the computer management window open. We also want to note that we can set the password for the user account by right-clicking the account, user account and selecting new password as well, right? So just to put that out there, but right now we're gonna go her account and then have the properties, right? Then member of, right? So then we're going to add her to the group that we just mentioned here, right? Then we're going to, as we mentioned, backup operators. We want to underline. There we go. All right, perfect. And then now we can see that Jane is now a member of backup operators, right? So let's see. So now what we're going to do is just, okay, close this out, right? And now we're going to create a domain user account. So Active Directory, it usually serves as a single repository of objects, right? So such as user and computer accounts that are used on the domain. So these accounts are used to delegate permissions, right, to users and computers to access specific resources on the network. So you can create a domain user account with different levels of permissions. Like for example, right, you can't create a normal user account that has basic level amount of permissions, right? And or you could create a user account with administrative permissions, and there are more permissions to which a user account can be created. So now we're going to create a domain user account and delegate specific permissions to it, right? So we're going to head here, then go to Window Administrative Tools. Actually, I need to go to another PM here. Right, just a moment. Okay. Right, there we go. So now we can do what we need to do here. Users and computers. Right. Yeah, it's already expanded. Then we want sales here. Then we'll see. I click here. Should be an option for a user here. We click sales, but nonetheless, we still have what we're looking for, right? As far as the different users here. Yeah, okay, perfect. So actually, here it is, a new user, that's fine. We'll create a new one under the name Josh Fairbanks. Happened here. Okay. Sorry about that. What happened? Right, perfect. There we go. And then the log on name, we'll just name it the last name, Fairbanks. J. Perfect. All right. Then of course, the password here. Okay. Perfect. Let's finish this up here. And we'll see that Josh has been actually added to our sales folder for the Active Directory users and computers dialog box here. All right. So now that we've completed that, we know that it has been created. We understand that this account can be used now to log into a domain join computer to access specific resources like a file share, right? So we're going to keep this window open, and now we're going to add a domain user to a domain group, right? So by default, when you create a user in the Active Directory, it's automatically added to the user domain group. So the permissions of the user domain group are applied to the newly created user, right? So this means that the user can perform a few tasks like run applications, use local and network printers, log into a domain joined computer, shut down the computer, and lock the computer. So when a computer joins the domain users group is added to the local users group of the computer. So this means that any domain user can log in to the system but perform limited tasks, as mentioned above prior, just a few seconds ago. Now I'm going to add a user to a group, right? So we're already in the active users, active directory users and computer window. Then we're going to click here, then go to properties here. Then let's see what we have here. Let's take a look. So we should work. So let's see the member of, right? And then we're going to click add here. Right? And then we're going to, there it is, print operators. Check. Perfect. All right. So by adding the user account to the print operators group, it gives the user the permission to manage printers. All the domain specific actions on printers can be performed by users that are part of this domain group. So just click OK, and then now that we see Josh Fairbanks is now a print operator. He's a member of this particular group, right? So now we notice that the account is again added. So now we're just going to close this out, right? And then we'll close this out as well. And now that we've demonstrated a few things, right? So we showed user and group account management, right? And so we created a local user with Jan, and then we managed our user account permissions, and then we created a domain user account with Josh. Then we also added that domain user. We added Josh to the domain group. And that'll be all for this video for administering user and group accounts. Thank you so much for watching.